Hello, everyone. This is the Commerce Experience podcast, where we equip e-commerce professionals to thrive in this exciting, ever-evolving space. I'm your host, Elena Kachan, Community Marketing Manager at Bloomreach. Today, we're taking a journey into the dynamic realm of consumer relationships. We're getting an inside look at the two-way dialogue between customer and brand with the Honey Pot Company, a seller of plant-derived feminine care products, and how its brand extends far beyond its website. In this exclusive conversation with Desiree Natali, we'll discover how to transcend the tired traditional models of communication and uncover the strategies that propelled Honey Pot into the forefront of community engagement, creating a unique bond with its audience across social media and community spaces. Desiree Natali is the Director of Social Media and Community at the Honey Pot Company. She has a passion for digital marketing and transformative brand building with experience in reshaping traditional brick and mortar retailers into social first community hubs. Desiree, welcome to the Commerce Experience.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, I'm really excited to get into this conversation with you just because community manager to community manager, I thought we'd have some interesting things to talk about. But for those listening who might be unfamiliar, could you give maybe like a high level overview of what is the Honey Pot Company? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so the Honey Pot is a plant-derived vaginal wellness brand. We started almost 10 years ago from our CEO having an 8-month battle with bacterial vaginosis. From that, she had a dream with her ancestor who came and gave her the ingredients for what now is one of our vulva washes. From that vulva wash, we then expanded to wipes and menstrual care, sexual wellness, and now we're really like a full hub of plant-derived care, better for you care for people's bodies.
I love that. And I've seen you in Target before, which is kind of what caught my eye. And I know that you guys are in major retailer stores, but you guys have an interesting relationship with your customers because a lot of it is kind of community based. Obviously, you're in charge of all of that. So have you seen the conversation between you guys and your customers kind of differ from what we've seen in traditional models of communication? Maybe like, is it because of the industry that you're in, or is it because of the social media age that we're in? What do you think?
It's both because the industry, again, has always been controlled by a very small number of brands. And so you have this this renaissance of now you get to choose between 20 different tampon brands. Like in talking to my elders, like my mom, my grandma, it's like unheard of to have 20 different tampons you can go and choose from, all these different sexual wellness products. You had like 2 types and like one of those was a menstrual belt. So like, the industry has changed so much, but then also with the fact that we grew because of our community. We had a viral moment that was reflected first on like Instagram and Facebook, to where if you go back to, 2020, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming and be like, where's the product? I'm going into Target. We had a commercial that ran talking about our founder story. And then from that, there was like such a huge like sigh of relief of thankfully there's someone who actually knows what it's like to have a vagina and have the experiences, and that is who's making my product. We really saw like the loudest like rally cry ever, to where like at that point the team was so nimble and so tiny. People were like, how do we start quickly hiring people? There was a long period of time we were sold out of products because there was such a viral moment that we really weren't like prepared for. And it was, I feel like after that we year over year have had these like these peak moments, but it's all driven by our community. So I think also being a social first brand, to where people in 2020, of course, those moments of connections were only through the digital age. And so from that, what you see is a lot of those, our ride or dies, our number ones are from Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all these social platforms. So that also has driven a lot of our strategy as well.
I love that. And I feel like if you are social first, or you are thinking about the customer first, there's a sense of comfortability when they buy your product and they feel like they can give you that feedback, or they are part of the process. As someone who is also focused on community, I want to create that safe space. But when brands do it, and even as a buyer or a consumer, like I love when people, or brands make me feel like they're engaging with me, that they get me, they're here for me, they want to listen. As a content creator myself, I'm posting or tagging a brand on the socials, and there's nothing I love more than getting a little DM back. It's that personal touch that you get, and especially for you guys, you started community first, so I'm sure it's been interesting to see that grow.
it's fascinating because when I came in, the company was so small to where everything was done through DMs. I'm talking about, any complaints with orders, any helps with shipments, anything. And I was like going through the DMs and I was like, whoa, this is this is insane. But to your point, like people, it was a real person. It was a human who spent, 80 hours a week, really. Like I'm going to pour my whole life's work into being on these DMs and in your comments, and I will give you everything I can, from this one-to-one connection. Of course, as you scale and grow, then we're like, okay, how do we create some processes? Because that can't be done with millions of people. But that's really where the brand started. People were like DMing us, like calling our team out by name, because that's how much they like knew the team members. Like, hey girl, I'm back again for another month of ordering.
Well, yeah, gone are the days where a social media manager can be expected to just like monitor DMs 24/7. But in terms of scaling, it's always good to know that like that's kind of where you started. That's like the sentiment that you're giving your customers. And they know that obviously like that's not realistic in real life to expect a response that quickly now, especially with you guys scaling. But I'm curious to hear maybe like a recent conversation or an interaction between you all and your customers that maybe stands out to you. I know you guys are an interesting industry and have an interesting product, so I'm sure there's probably some unique interactions, but does anything stand out to you directly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the power of the brand is not only having this like really beautiful community hub who like they talk back and forth to us and so we respond, but then also we've employed a lot of social listening tactics to also figure out like what are those humans who haven't started on that journey yet for their, their vaginal or vulva care? Like who are the people who are just kind of in that first like seeds of being like, what's going on? And so what comes to mind is that there was a human who had made a TikTok joking about how people wear white underwear. And she was like, I don't get that. I like, I don't feel like secure in that. She was like, how are people like feeling like refreshed and cleaning, yada, yada. And so we responded with it by giving her like, we have tons of wipes of all different types of naturally derived formulas, everything from cucumber owl to bergamot rose. And so we responded giving her like 50 of them. And we had like anti-itch to normal, sensitive and this and that and all this stuff. And then we had some other things in there and wrote her like just like a really like quirky note. And then we also put a bunch of white underwear in there. And we were just kind of like, like wear it fearlessly, girl. You like, you've got it. You're okay. And so then she like had gotten the box, tried on the underwear, made this whole video about it. And she was like, I've never felt so confident. Her roommate was in it. It was a lot of fun, but it was those moments we were like, okay, like, of course we need to send her product, but like, let's order this girl, like some like, some like risque stuff.
I love that. That is so sweet. And I'm sure she will never forget that interaction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause what kind of brand like sends you like,
Yeah, exactly. That's like going up a notch and you're like, oh, wow, like they actually sent me all of this stuff. That's amazing. Customers don't expect that, but it's always like a pleasant surprise. They always say like if you're in marketing, like surprise and delight. Like how can we make them feel seen and connected with and heard? So the fact that you kind of like took that and you're like, okay, we're listening. Like, what do you need? We got you covered. Makes you feel like, yeah, they're there for you, which I love. You have a lot of experience navigating the e-commerce space through social media and community, working at this big brand. So I want to start at a high level and get your take on how you perceive the consumer and brand relationship shifting. What does that look like for you?
Of course. I what we see right now is that traditional marketing has always been you give your marketing and then you wait, 30, 60, 90 days and you get your results. What you're seeing now is that conversation is way more back and forth. So like the consumer has more power more than ever to talk back and say what they like, what they don't like, the particulars, what they need for you to do next. But then also it's immediate. So the reaction time of like, okay, well, we have 90 days to reflect to figure out how we're going to optimize next. Like, no, it's the next day. It's like that night after you posted something, it's like, okay, we have feedback and they want to see a reaction within, 24, 48 hours. So I think with that, like you're seeing the environment, call for a lot more nimbleness, call for a lot more insightfulness because there's so many voices and those voices have a lot of power. So it's also understanding how do you kind of get that collective reception of what people are saying and then reflect that in your marketing quickly.
It's happening so fast, isn't it? Like any social media platform is making it super easy for people to engage immediately. In terms of like industry trends, how is that impacting your work at the Honey Pot Company? Obviously managing social media and community. Anything that you're seeing from an industry standpoint that you guys are working towards?
Yeah, I think what was really interesting in the industry is that for the first time ever, you heard the collective voice that are really screaming, like, we want to know exactly what is in our product. I would say over like the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of demands, like people want to know exactly what's in their tampons. They want to know, like, how did it get there? They want to know, like, what exactly is in their packaging of their pads. And so what we've had to do a lot is figuring out how do we create so much transparency, transparency, and transparency. I have learned so much about the products. Me and R&D and the full marketing team and R&D are like this at this point because we're like, no, they have to know. And people, and sometimes, your operations team is like, do they really need to know like what the adhesion of the pad is? Like, absolutely. They want to know absolutely everything about it. And at this point, with the information age, really, it's about over communicating rather than under communicating, which has been an extreme shift in the industry for us.
You don't ever want to feel like the brand is pulling one over on you or you're buying a product and you don't know what you're receiving. I'm the same way. I mean, like I have to know, especially when it comes to like wellness and health. So I 100% understand that. So I was going to say in terms of like specific content pieces, what types of content or initiatives like have resonated most with your community? Is there anything unique that you're trying in 2024 that maybe you could share with us? Maybe it'll give some other listeners some inspiration.
Yeah, so the content that's resonated the most for us have been like the craziest test and learns, and I mean that like very literally. At one point, we were just kind of chatting, like, what if we just had like a vulva just like chatting, like at a dinner table? What if we just had her having dinner? And we are like, oh, okay, like let's test it. People were like, I need her. Bring her back. We have to have more conversations from the vulva. So then now it's like a little caricature for the brand. And it's come like not only from like a still image, but now we have full like videos. We have like the vulva come to events. We have now built the vulva out into a mascot to where we have someone who actually physically dresses around, like dances around as the vulva. And so it's those moments of being like, let's just like try and see how it goes. But that's kind of where that social listening is. When someone was like, oh, like we need episodic, we need weekly series. It was like, okay, where are they going to go next? Let's do it. Even like we had like a cartoonist reach out and was like, we want to do some like cartoons for you guys. And it was kind of like, okay, well, we've never done that before. And this is kind of the era where it was still like very much like me focus on a photography. I did not see a lot of cartoons, but like you're not going to break it. So I was like, okay, let's try it. Did so well. Now she's been on retainer for like 3 years for the brand now, just like creating consistent cartoons for us because it's something that people have associated with the brand. So it's interesting because it's not formulaic. It is never something that we expect. People always say it in social, like don't ever plan to go viral. And those are the things I've always done the best for us when we're just kind of like playing around and being joyful and letting ourselves like really flex our creativity and like not worry about the results. Those are the moments where it's like, oh, wow, hold up, they want more.
Isn't it funny how that happens?
It's so interesting too, because like every time I do my strategy presentation, I tell like my leadership teams, like we're not planning for virality. So I actually go into our data and I pull out posts that went viral and I tell them this is like average performance I can promise you year over year, but I'm not counting all of these because I don't promise virality. And every time it happens, the next week they're like, oh my God, another person's going viral. And I'm like, no.
You're like, yes.
Yes, but yes. It's like, yes, but also like, don't keep expecting this.
Yes, you just never
just
know.
Just like let it happen.
Yes, exactly. That's too funny. And you're like, okay, not bad.
Yes, it's always so exciting. Like even this weekend, something on YouTube Shorts started like, like popping off into like some degree. And I was like, whoa, okay, like finally. And YouTube Shorts is one of those things that for me personally is still like a gray area of like, okay, it's not YouTube, but it's not TikToks. Like what's going on here? In terms of 2024, what I'm really excited about is how do we take these like little nuggets and things that we know that people love about our brand and expand it. So for example, we just got our vulva cartoon and turned into a mascot. And so we're getting to explore like, what does that look like? Like, do we hand it off to someone who, is across like the country and they can go hiking with her and do like, different like experiments with her? Like we're just kind of playing around, like, what does it look like to build this like vulva? And I apologize for gendering Miss Coochie or the Coochie, wherever we want to call them. But so we're really trying to flex and figure out like what are some different ways that we can get out of like the normalcy of like how the mascot has appeared like in graphics. What's really interesting too is that we have seen a little bit soft performance like on our own TikTok content. I think when channels have been posting consistently for years and years, sometimes perhaps it gets a little bit stale and like you kind of get into like, the rat race of it. So what we're really also looking at is like how do we can get unique content creators to drive that TikTok success for the brand. So we're partnering with a lot of like interesting influencers. Like we've challenged our team, like, like they don't have to be a wellness get ready with me influencer. Like we worked with some person who was like, come take a poop with me. Like that was like her content. We're like, why not? Like, let's send her out the content. We found someone who did minis and it was like, okay, like what if they made minis for the brand? And so we're really trying to flex in different ways of like, what are like some interesting, weird content creators, like for lack of a better word, that they just like know how to tap into like interesting and new stuff. I think we're hitting the age where people are a little bit tired of being sold stuff in unboxing. And they're tired of getting like you want to know what my like Sunday reset routine is. And so now we're really having to flex in, areas that are a little bit uncomfortable and like, uncomfortable pitching to leadership where it's like, okay, so just for roller skates.
Yeah, here's what we're
she's gonna
thinking.
do tricks off the rollerblade and somehow we're gonna make it work with the brand.
Well, I love that you get a chance to like be creative, like you said, and I think people are tired of the same old stuff. So how do you step out of that box? How do you try something different? I know maybe if you're working for a major brand or major corporation and you're like tasked with marketing, social media, community building, maybe even how to sell, it's like sometimes you got to try different things to like get different results, So if things aren't working, it's kind of like, okay, it's time to pivot. And almost, I just had a recent conversation where it's like, trust your team to like be creative and like let them cook a little bit. Like, let's see how it works. And I think if you're too afraid to step outside of the box, I don't think you're ever going to like get those results of being viral. I mean, like you might, but I do think that kind of like lends itself nicely to like seeing some success in different ways that you never expected, right? Like you never expected, vulva to come to life to be a mascot, but here we are.
Yeah, I think what's also interesting about that is that the months of virality, while we do have beautiful, amazing, phenomenal products, other products that like could sell themselves, the best ideas don't typically come from like, okay, here's the pad, market the pad. The best ideas come from like us talking as people who menstruate, as people who have like those experiences and talking to our friends. Like there are so many times where I've been like chatting with someone and they'll just like mention an experience and I'm like, you're going to see that now and you're going to have to accept. And I was like, I will not use your name or your likeness, but this is too good of an experience. So I think it's also like, how do you flip the messaging on its head to where product marketing is like the most comfortable thing to do and it is most natural because we also are trying to deliver on business goals, but it's not why people follow a brand. Like I don't want to keep hearing about your product marketing every single day when I log into Instagram. At a certain point, It's gonna be like
like we were talking about transparency. People care what's in it and they want to be able to go read that on your website maybe, but like I don't need to see every single social post saying here are the ingredients and here's the unique plant-based formula. Like, okay, whatever. No, what problem is it solving for me? If it's, like whatever that looks like for each customer, that's what they want to see. That's what they want to feel. So a marketer's job is not easy and I'm sure you can relate.
No, it's
Most
not.
people,
Like you're balancing like two things. It's like, okay, well, I have like KPIs to hit, but also like I know my audience does not want that. So like, how do I like sneak attack?
yeah, bridge the gap.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious about how you all measure success when it comes to community engagement. Now we've talked about like just testing and learning and hearing from your community directly, but do you ever see like e-com, like sales strategies, whether it's marketing or merchandising, maybe impact that success directly? Obviously we work in that space, so I'm curious to hear if there's any overlap for you guys.
Yeah, I would say like on like the, core baseline of how we like measure success for social is like the first is engagement. Second is reach. We've pivoted from using follower growth, especially with like the algorithm serving unique content. It's like, okay, well, does followers like really matter? We've all know that followers were vanity metrics. And now we can all be honest about it as social media managers. And so now we're looking at reach. In terms of e-commerce goals, that is a difficult one to track, especially with the new regulations that are now in place of like limiting tracking to in order to protect consumers' privacy. So it really is like, what is a synergy? Like we have to be really attentive to, okay, like, well, this was on and we have this ad running and this influencer going live and these 5 posts. And this was kind of like the peak growth like rate, or, this is what we saw in terms of what was selling. And sometimes that is not a one for one. Sometimes, if someone's talking about, we have herbal infused pads that people describe as spicy, cooling, whatever. So if someone's like talking about like, oh my gosh, like a spicy pad, you'd expect, a spike in reach for like the spicy pad, but maybe that means a non-herbal pad because then it like evoked a conversation of like what is between herbal and non-herbal. So it's also not a one for one. We lean on a really, really amazing, intelligent sales team. So where I can be like, okay, well, we had, this influencer post, this celebrity tag us, this stuff going on. Like, what do you think it is? Like, where do you see the peaks happening? What retailer? Because also because of the nature of how people shop for their vaginal care, a lot of that is not through e-commerce. A lot of that is going to be through a Target, a Walmart, an Amazon, a Walgreens. And like, there's only so much of that data that we can pull. So it's a little bit of art and a little bit of science that kind of come together that helps us make the best use case. What is also interesting too is like finding those numbers that like tick up when everything's on, but also finding the numbers that tick down when everything's off. So it's really interesting where we're like, okay, we're going to pull back a little bit on budget. And then we start seeing a pull back in some areas. I was like, that was it. You can kind of see like what we were even able to sustain, which is a really great use case too.
Totally. And it makes you stay on your toes. Like you have to stay ready with all of this. Well, I was wondering too, if you being obviously in the business for a long time, you're obviously a marketer who cares, you're passionate about community, social, measuring success. If you were starting over from scratch and you didn't have the momentum that you guys have, would you measure success differently? You're like, no, I can't even imagine. Is there anything you would do differently? I mean,
yeah.
I
think if you're starting from scratch, like the brand's like a baby. I think that in order to convince someone to put something on your body, especially a body part that is so intimate, you have to have like a long-term relationship. So right now we're at the point to where if you were to Google our brand, you're going to see stuff come up. We have a panel of experts and gynecologists and all these clinical testing and the ingredient glossary. So at this point, like, we have a really, really beautiful foundation that took us a really long time to show and put into our marketing to make sure that people had visibility into it. If we're going to start over from scratch, meaning we don't have any of that, I don't have my ingredient glossary. I don't have, you can't Google us and see that Cardi B reviewed the pads. At that point, you kind of have to take e-commerce out of the equation, which is something that's really uncomfy to tell people. And I think back to where I've worked for, startup brands and like its baby stage or even coming into Honeypot to where it was, it's like, you can't expect sales. You have to have a long-term relationship. It's almost like any type of relationship with a friend, romantic family member. You can't like just all of a sudden like think that we're that close. Like, ma'am, who are you? Like, what's going on? And so you have to really inform your team of like, the lead time of seeing a peak in sales from social media marketing or marketing period is gonna be long. Like to have a brand tell me I'm gonna put something on my vulva, like I gotta know like I need to see reviews,
everything, yeah.
Other people have it. And so in that you really pivot to more looking at engagement and reach. If I had to start over again, and we still do this as a brand, much of our content is education forward. And so we focus a lot on like, how do we get people to understand just like how your body works? Like, forget the product, like what is menstruation? Like, what are the symptoms? Like, how do you know that you're going through fluxes of pH? I would set that as like the foundation for, the first 6 months to a year's content, to make sure that people understand we get you and you can like trust us. And then pulsing in product very, very lightly, and then making sure that we start again at that point of like, okay, what does it mean to build up, our clinical claims? How do we get gynecologists in the mix? What do we do to make sure that people can like pull behind the curtain, understand like we know what we're doing. We're not just like, playing around.
Yeah, totally. I think all of those points are really great. I feel like you have to build that trust with your consumer and the people that are buying. I think that for products that people buy and use on their bodies or wellness. It's interesting. You kind of need that like boots on the ground too. I don't know. Did you guys ever do any grassroots marketing, or were you guys ever in the field kind of marketing to people directly? Was that a part of your strategy at the beginning?
Yeah, so when B was making the product, again, she made it for herself and she made it out of her kitchen. And so when she made it for herself, she's like, oh, wow, this is crazy. Like, it worked for me. What if I can give it to friends? And so that was that grassroots things of like, then like friends and family started being like, it worked for me too. What's interesting in this thing I had just mentioned of like, communities or content that's outside of just health and wellness. So where the grassroots a lot of times kind of started from too, were actually hair shows. And so the thought was like, how many people are tapped into their health and wellness, and like where can we go with a lot of people have vaginas. And so that like one-to-one was a hair show. And so one of the first places I think Honey Pot showed up in like a larger experience was, giving vulva washes at this, one-to-one connection with people, just trying to share like what Honey Pot is, what's really going on. B has a lot of other friends and family that are involved with it. And so her mother is actually used to be a nurse. And so like there was also that connection there if she was like, okay, like let me like seed it out too and like have people try it. A lot of the brand people try products. Like when we talk about like testing, like our products, like we are the first testers, which is like a lot of fun. And so there is that like grassroots too of still like, we want to make sure the product is human first. And how do you have that one-to-one connection that's just outside of digital marketing?
Okay, so I'm curious to hear what you think, but are there any innovative approaches or technologies that you believe will shape the future of how brands are engaging with their communities? You have to let people know, but obviously the personalization is so key. So we're actually rolling out a new product. It's called Clarity. And just for reference, Honey Pot is not a customer yet, but it might be interesting of sorts just because a lot of other e-commerce brands are really excited to tap in. But say you're shopping for a bottle of wine at a party, but you don't exactly know what it's paired with or what the host is making. But instead of stressing out over it, you could just type all of the information in about the meal, how many people you're serving, and then we provide, or Clarity, the AI behind it all, which is just crazy to me, provides those personalized recommendations on like what bottles you can buy, say from Total Wine or somewhere else. So the type of technology that's expanding right now to understand like human language and really like understanding what it is that you need. Like all you have to do is type in kind of your goals or your needs or your wants, and we've got you like with recommendations, like mind blown. But I think for brands, it could really take like an engagement opportunity to the next level. And I feel like that's kind of maybe where we're headed. And as someone who loves technology and wants to lean into AI, do you see kind of technology making that a little bit easier, especially if you don't like can automate? Like, are you interested in automating things that like kind of make, because caption writing, I totally get, you have a tone of voice that you want to stick to, but when it comes to automating, like how can we make life easier, especially for the customer?
I think the big opportunity here is that when you, again, going back to the fact that we had a social media, manager who was working day and night in DMs to give people a one-to-one. So if I tell you I have a yeast infection at 3 a.m., you're getting a response the next morning promptly about this is a unique basket that I built for you. When you kind of talk about the intimate experience of any type of like highs and lows of your intimate care, it does need to be quick. I'm not trying to wait a long time. So I think with AI empowers you if there was some sort of chat functionality where it's like, okay, well, I'm dealing with dryness. And so what do I do? Okay, so there's a vulva cream, there's a lube, there's this, there's that. You should also look into what does your pH look like? Perhaps you look into a suppository, a probiotic, and that type of routine, ritual building is really powerful. I think what's so fascinating is that when I tell people about Honey Pot, a lot of people are like, okay, so what do you need? And you kind of walk back into that experience, and everyone has had experiences happen with their body. People get sick, bodies get sick, vulvas have their moment, but no one really knows what that means. We've all just kind of been really quiet about it. So if we can have something to where a customer is able to A, feel really comfortable sharing an experience, and B, get a quick and accurate response from a brand. Maybe it's our vulva cartoon being hey, we've got you. Here's a customized basket experience. Here's some education about how you can support. Go visit your gyno, have these conversations, and this is us empowering you to be able to take control of your body. I think that is like one of the most powerful ways I could see that coming to life.
Totally. I think that might be the future. And obviously, I'm not just saying that because we don't have the capabilities, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
imagine as a marketer, kind of like setting it up for success to where it like gives the customer that like well-rounded and I don't want it to say it takes the place of anybody, but at the end of the day, like it takes that pressure off of you to be on demand at every second of every day, and gives you that personalized recommendation based on everything that we feed it and all of the things that we're teaching it. So I am really excited to see like whether companies like you guys or other companies who are selling online and in person, like how are they going to tap into that technology and that AI to kind of like help give like that really personalized experience that it seems like your customers and your community really looks for.
Yeah, even with like skincare and hair care, I always think like it's just so overwhelming. Like I don't know,
Totally.
like now there's like 10 serums out there and I'm like, I don't understand. Like,
Tell
what
me
do I
what I
get?
need.
Just tell me what to
Yeah.
get.
Yes. Tell me what I need. And also it's hard to like trust people, and it's hard to like, people might be pushing an agenda. They might be pushing their own biases. So I'm always wary about that. So I'm curious, and just to wrap up, is there anything you're looking forward to in the realm of community and brands engaging with their customers? Anything you're excited about that you would like to share? Because I know a lot of people are focused on community. Anything that you can kind of share for the listeners?
Yeah. I think what's so like exciting and exhilarating as someone who's worked in social is seeing how community has made its way to other channels. So for example, like the girl dinner was a community moment. Someone was like, "Hey, like does anyone else like stay in their fridge and eat like 12 olives and call that dinner?" And so then you start seeing like girl dinner as a trend, and then you start seeing these like content hubs. But then you saw Popeyes launch a girl dinner. I went to a restaurant the other day and their menu, it was a girl dinner, and you could order like a little bit of like every appetizer. And those are like moments that like give me like the tingles, or I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is gonna be it. Like this is now, like we have a line item in the budget of like social first campaigns. Like we have to move quickly, but then also we have to realize like people's relationship with the brand does not just exist with what we are telling them. Like what are they saying? Like is, it was girl dinner last year, but like what's gonna happen next year? And I think that's like the most exciting thing of like where we can also just let our creativity like go and flow, and how do we make brand moments that are really, really powerful? So that's what I'm most excited about.
I love that. And it's always fun when all of those feedback pieces or like even trends come to life, and like brands are definitely like tapping into it, because I feel like those get the most attention. You're like, oh my gosh, this brand totally crushed it. But it's just like brands who are actually paying attention to what's going on. I love the social listening aspect that you mentioned. It's just like maybe it's a trend, maybe it's a viral moment, maybe it's a customer testimonial, but like jumping on it while the iron is hot and like leveraging it to be a social first campaign. I love that you guys are thinking about that. I think that's what's going to set you apart and make your customers feel really uniquely close to you,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I think what's so beautiful is the fact that like what really kind of starts at all of this is like a care for your community and a care for people. And I think when you go into community management, you're probably naturally empathetic person, and you probably naturally really want to help people. And I think what's really beautiful about Honey Pot and so many other brands that you can tell like these brands did not come to just like make bottom line, like it actually came from a care from like community. And so I think that's like one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give people is like, get out of like the decks and like the KPI sometimes, and think about like, how can I best serve humans, which is what we're on this planet to do, like as, what we're doing at Honey Pot.
I'm the same way. I manage our community of power users, so people who are in our tool daily, and I'm always like trying to put my ear to the ground. I'm like, what are you guys working on? What do you guys care about? What are you struggling with? Like how can I help you? And I want to know like the good, the bad, the ugly, just so I can like figure out how to make the experience better for people. So I do think that community is on the rise when it comes to major brands, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. So as we close out, I wanted to ask, where can people find you? Is there anything you guys have coming up that you want to share for Honey Pot for the listeners?
Yeah. So people can find us as a brand, we're on Instagram at the Honey Pot Co. Same handle for TikTok. We also have YouTube Short, Twitter, Threads, Facebook. We are on it all. exciting things are coming up for next year. We have a really, really, really amazing product. I try to like dance around it, so I hope I didn't sound funky in some parts of the podcast, but we do have a product that is launching in the spring that I'm so excited about. Unfortunately, cannot share just yet, but highly encourage you to stay tuned. We have definitely taken plant-derived pH balance into a whole new level with like what we can do to best serve humans. So that's what I'm really, really excited about. Yeah. And then we also do have a
Awesome.
website, thehoneypot.co. So come see us. We have lots of information, education. If you're not interested in like buying product right now, there's so much education that we've poured into about how people can tap into more of their vaginal wellness. So
Absolutely. And you're also a thought leader in the community and social media space. So if you are also interested in building community and in the social media space, I think people would benefit from listening to this episode, connecting with you directly. So I hope everybody got some great takeaways from this episode. I know I did. Thank you all for tuning in. And before we close, I just want to thank all of the listeners who have grown with us. As the new host, I want you all to feel seen, heard, inspired, and I want to create content that you look forward to hearing. So in the spirit of growth and feedback and community, let me know what you thought of this episode. If there's a specific topic you want to hear more about in the future as we plan ahead, I am all ears and I would love to collaborate. So email podcast@bloomreach.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye.